I am Dr. P. Krishna Mohan Reddy, Assistant Professor in History, Sri Venkateswara University, Tirupati. Recently, there have been several debates in the TVs in Andhra Pradesh. Professor Kancha Ilaiah, he wrote a book sometime back. The title of the book was Why I Am Not a Hindu. The title itself clearly suggests that he is not a Hindu and he hates Hinduism. That is what he wrote that book. Recently, a portion of that book was translated into Hindu, which was titled as Komatollu Samajika Smuggler. Roughly it can be translated as Vaishyas, that is the merchant class, who are smugglers in the society. The Vaishya community got offended and they started retorting Mr. Kancha Ilaiah. Unfortunately, Kancha Ilaiah, when he faced first time this retort in the televisions, he started to take refuge in the fact that he started saying that the Telangana government, the TRS government in KCR, is actually shielding the Seemandhra politicians, and Seemandhra politicians like T.G. Venkatesh, the member of parliament from Kurnool, is actually dominating the Telangana state. So he also requested police help, that his life is in danger from the Vaishyas. When that ploy didn't work, he started to take refuge in caste politics. He started to attack that if he is criticized, the Dalit, Bahujan, SC/ST people, Bahujan people will attack and counterattack the critics. In fact, when they started to question, are you a Dalit? He said that no, I am a Bahujan, but Dalit Bahujans will rescue. And first of all, it is not worthy of serious scholarly debate, because none of his arguments or most of his books, they are not scholarly works, rather they are his personal opinions and personal prejudices, because it does not provide any evidence whatsoever from the ancient texts or inscriptions or even from literature. First and foremost, he criticizes Hinduism, that Hinduism started discriminating the Dalits right from the Manudharma Shastra. So he hates Manudharma Shastra, of course. He has criticized the Hindu religion itself. First of all, when he starts criticizing Hinduism based on Manudharma Shastra, so he never raises about the reform that has taken place in Hinduism. So right from the beginning, it is very, very doubtful whether Manudharma Shastra was in fact followed strictly in India, because right from the 3rd century BC to 3rd century AD, if you see, most of the ruling classes were of doubtful origin. For example, Nandas, they were supposed to be not a worthy, not a origin which was worthy. Same case with the Mauryas. And after the Guptas, you see, most of the ruling dynasties, right from the Rashtrakutas to South Indian Kakatiyas, and also the Reddy kingdoms, even Yadava kingdoms of Karnataka, and later Vijayanagara kingdom, all of them were Shudras. If Manudharma was in practice, how could the Shudras become kings and ruled kingdoms, even empires? So that is not at all scientific to say that Manudharma Shastra was followed in India in true spirit. Number two, how many people knew about Manudharma Shastra in ancient India or medieval India? What was the rate of literacy? Hardly 2%, 3% literacy rate was there. Who bothered about Manudharma or Narada Smriti or any other Smriti? I think Manudharma Shastra became famous only after Ambedkar started to attack it. Now all these scholars, the so-called anti-Hindu scholars, are using Manudharma Shastra for their own interpretations. What about the reform of Hinduism that went on right from the Shankaracharya's time to medieval period? What about Bhakti movement? What about Vemana's teachings? What about 17th century, 18th century, Tukaram's teaching? So what about later even Arya Samaj or Bhakti Samaj? Whatever the reforms of Mahatma Gandhi, he was the one, a Vaishya himself, he was the one who first undertook the plight of Dalits, the so-called Dalits. He named them Harijans, that they are the sons of Hari, the Vishnu himself. He started to give them the respect they deserved. So he doesn't speak any reform of Hinduism. On the other hand, he cherry picks Buddhism. So Buddhism, he says as though Buddhism is the reformed religion, as though Buddhism embraced all the Dalits, and I challenged him right from the Buddha's time, 6th century BC to almost 8th century AD, Buddhism was there in one form or the other in India, especially in South India. In Andhra Pradesh it was there even in the 11th century AD. I challenged him how many times Buddha asked his followers to go and propagate about the respect for Dalits. I challenge Kancha Ilaiah and other scholars to show me in the 8th centuries that Buddhism flourished, what was that even Buddha did to eradicate untouchability. Show me how many Dalit monks are there in Buddhism. In the 8th century AD, if Buddhism was a religion of reform, if it wanted to remove casteism, if Buddha preached to remove casteism, why is that in 8th centuries casteism was not removed by Buddhism? Why is that untouchability followed, continued even under Buddhism? This is my question. Show me one single instance where Buddha condemned casteism. In fact, all the Jataka stories, they only speak about casteism, karma philosophy, rebirth, except condemning Vedic karma kanda. Buddhism is not very different from Hinduism. So don't glorify Buddhism as though it eradicated untouchability or casteism. Buddhism is in many respects similar to Hinduism. So whatever reform that came to eradicate untouchability, it came from Hinduism, not from Buddhism. This is the fact. And he says that in his book, which is translated into Telugu as Hindu Matanantara Bharat Desham, he writes all his personal opinions about the so-called productive caste, that all the productive castes like potters or smiths, ironsmiths, bakers, all of these are productive class, and Brahmins and Vaishyas did not produce anything. So some people countered him that Brahmins were teachers, Vaishyas were traders. There is a service class. So he says that he does not answer directly. But my question is, even among the so-called Bahujans, Dalit Bahujans, so Madhikas did not produce anything. They were actually service class, as you yourself said. They were removing all the corpses and all that work they were doing. It's a noble work, of course. And barbers, they did not produce anything. Washermen, they did not produce anything. They also service classes. So you want to belittle their contribution also. If teaching profession is not a productive profession, you are yourself a teacher, then you should contribute all your salary to your own caste people and other Bahujans who are producing, who are the shepherds, they are producing, the farmers they are producing. You should donate all your salary because you are a teacher and you are not producing anything to them. If you preach a high moral ground, you start showing it first. Charity begins at home, Professor Ilaiah. You do it first. And he starts that the Hindu society, Hindu Samajam, he says, Hindu society discriminated the Dalits. It is the Hindu society which discriminates. Of course it is true. And my question is, in the Hindu society, Hindu Samajam, were there only Brahmins, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas? Your caste was there. All the Bahujans were also a part of Hindu society, Hindu Samajam. They also discriminated equally the Dalits. In fact, Dalits were the only community who were untouchables. All the Bahujanis Actually, the class of Bahujans or BCs was not there when Manu said, even in the 16th, 17th centuries, all the Shudras were one single class. So there was no Bahujan class at that time. It is only recent invention. When the reservations for Dalits were propounded, they wanted to extend reservations to other backward classes. Okay, even the Shudras also. But even the scheduled tribes, most of them are touchables. Scheduled tribes also, they treat Dalits as untouchables. The OBCs, the so-called Shudras also, they practice untouchability against Dalits even today. In fact, in one TV channel itself, some Dalits asked Kancha Ilaiah in a Telugu channel that in their village even barbers and washermen also discriminate against the Dalits, they practice untouchability. So don't pose as though as a representative of Bahujans you don't practice any untouchability. Your own community practices untouchability against Dalits even today. So you are part and parcel of Hindu Samajam, so Hindu society. Don't try to play a victim card. You are yourself a perpetrator of the crime against Dalits. So Bahujans also are equally responsible for the crime of untouchability against the Dalits. So don't try to isolate Bahujans from the Hindu society. Whenever people start questioning his interpretation of Hinduism, that no, there are so many untouchables in Hinduism also. There were so many sages, so many philosophers. So when they say, he says that no, okay, if it is so, come and let's dine in the Dalits' home. Of course, they should come and dine with you, Brahmins and Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. First, Kancha Ilaiah, first take your own caste people in your villages, take a Madiga with you, with your own caste people, have them dine with only your caste people. And I challenge you, in the last 100 years, how many Bahujans, how many Yadavs, how many shepherds, how many barbers, how many washermen have allowed Madigas and Malas to dine in their own homes? Did they allow? So why are you questioning Brahmins and Vaishyas? When your own Bahujan caste, they never allowed Madigas and Malas, other Dalit people to dine along with you. First you start showing. I challenge you, go to UP, Uttar Pradesh, go to Bihar, take the Yadavs and take Madigas and Malas, Mahar and Chamars with you and start dining in their homes. First you start with the Bahujans. If you are successful, then we will go. Okay, I will also join with you. And by the way, in the 21st century, nobody practices this kind of politics. Okay, trying to defame Hinduism for your own benefit. Okay, then you talk about beef. So you have raised a bizarre question that just because beef was not allowed to be eaten, see all the SC, ST and BCs became weak. For your information, most of the BCs, including Yadavs, shepherds, they don't eat beef. They treat cow as a very pious animal. They don't eat. Most of the scheduled tribes also they don't eat. Only some Dalit caste they eat beef. So don't mix up beef eating with Hinduism. Most of the Hindus, 80% of the Hindus, they worship cow. They don't eat beef. Okay. First you clarify that. You pose as though all the Hindus eat beef. Bahujans they don't eat beef, most of them. Most of the scheduled tribes also they don't eat. Only some castes of the Dalits they eat beef. So if somebody respects beef, somebody respects cow, what is your problem? So Muslims they don't eat pork. You force them to eat pork for having some more energy. So it's a illogical thing to force. Anyway, if because of beef you can win a war, I question you, why did so many Arabic countries lost war? Because they were eating beef. Even today they eat beef, but they lost all the wars. So you think that pork eating will win the war? Will you advise Muslims also eat the pork? Mr. Ilaiah, in the First World War and Second World War, both the groups, Allies and Axis, both of them eat both pork and beef, but yet some of them won and some of them lost the war. What is your logic? So don't make this foolish argument of beef eating into winning the wars and losing the wars. And you say that no, the ancient Hinduism had so many discriminations and all that. I think even a 10th class person who studied ancient societies clearly knows it. Most of the ancient societies until the advent of industrial revolution were similar. Of course, every society cannot be the same, there will be some internal differences. The so-called division of society into ruling class, priestly class, merchant class and agricultural class were there in every society, in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in China, in Japan, even in tribal societies it was there. So you are bringing as though it is confined only to the Hindu society, it is not. Until the industrial revolution, even in Europe, there were occupational castes like barbers, like bakers, like smiths, like whatever profession, like agriculturists. So even today you can see in London Baker Street, even today you can see in the names smiths, couriers, knights, earls. There were so many occupational castes even today in England. So they were hereditary classes, but they were not called as castes in Europe, whereas in India hereditary occupations become a caste. So don't try to propagate that the hereditary groups, caste groups are only confined to Hinduism in India. The so-called discrimination was there even in your so-called Christian societies and Christian religions. For example, he criticized Hinduism that it discriminated against the Dalits. If you just go through the history, for example, if you see the apartheid in South Africa, when Ambedkar was fighting for equal rights in 1930s, by the way 1934-40 Dalits were also voting in our Indian elections. When Ambedkar was fighting for Dalits equal rights in 1930s and 40s, you see what was happening in South Africa. South Africa in 1930s, the blacks were treated like animals. In 1948, apartheid was made an official policy. By 1947, we got independence. No, Dalits were given high responsibility, high respect, and in 1940, in our constitution, we have made discriminations against Dalits as a crime. It's punishable under law by 1950 now. But 1950, from 1952 to 1984-85, you see, this was a complete discrimination of blacks in South Africa. And shockingly, for blacks in South Africa until 1985, right from 1948, there were separate buses, separate coaches, separate trains, separate cafes, separate toilets, separate park benches, separate hospitals, separate beaches, separate picnic areas, separate sports, and even separate churches. Okay, this was the situation in your Christian society, Kancha Ilaiah. Why do you hide this? Coming to your own egalitarian Christian society in America, what was happening in America? You just tell me. In 1950s, we had a constitution written, the chairman of the constitution was a Dalit himself, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, and we have given all the rights to Dalits. What was happening in 1940s and 50s in America? Coming before to 1940s and 50s, for 2 centuries, the Christian societies in Europe and America, they indulged in slave trade. They traded blacks like buffaloes. They were shipped into different continents, slave trade. Did any time in Indian history, right from the ancient period, right from the Manu time to this today, did Dalits were traded like slaves? Can you show me one evidence? Why do you defame Hinduism and you support Christianity? Why do you study the Dalits and discrimination and isolation, which is a sin? You cannot study discrimination and isolation. You are in the 21st century, you should study everything globally. And coming to America, in 1954 what was there? There were separate schools for blacks, separate benches, separate towns, separate hotels, separate cafes. In 1950s, in India, in any city, Bombay, Delhi, Chennai, Hyderabad or Calcutta, in any city, were there any separate hotels for Dalits, separate benches for Dalits, separate parks for Dalits, separate churches for Dalits in India? You never mentioned. We were voting, our Dalits were voting in India right from the 1940s. And in America, in spite of the fact that in 1968 Act was made by the Americans, even then Dalits were, blacks were afraid to vote. Even in 1970s, they were not allowed to vote. Even then there were discrimination practiced against the blacks in America. Only in the 1980s they started to vote. It took 2 centuries for a black American to become a president. Now, for the first time, right from the 1950s, 60s to, we have so many presidents, vice presidents, no, and ministers who occupied, Dalits occupied highest positions, both in the center and the states. So I challenge you, if you compare the so-called egalitarian Christian societies in these 2 centuries, our Hindu society was far, far better, Kancha Ilaiah. And what happened in Second World War? You see, Jews, 5 million Jews were butchered like animals. Many, several thousands fled. Can you show me in the history of India, in the history of Hinduism, how many Dalits were butchered, how many lakhs of Dalits were butchered? You raise Karan Chedu or another 1 or 2 incidents, but it never, no, Hindus never butchered so many lakhs of Dalits as so-called Christian societies did. This is a sin on your part to conceal these things from the public. Okay. Now coming to the so-called SC, ST, BC and minority association. So in Hindu society, everybody is a Hindu. There is no discrimination. Even Dalits were also Hindus. That's why Gandhi called them as Harijans. But who discriminated against them? STs discriminated, tribals discriminated against them. Okay, Brahmins, Vaishyas discriminated with them. Even the Shudras, the so-called OBs, Bahujans, your own caste people, even now discriminate them. So in Hindu society, you are part and parcel of Hindu society. So don't try to escape from the Hindu society. Okay. Now you say that coming to this unholy alliance. Nowadays, Dalits, they identify only Ambedkar as their leader. Earlier, all the SC, ST, BC minorities, they were identifying Ambedkar as a leader. No. Now BCs, they have their own leader. Phule, they selected their own leader. So even in the Dalits, there are so many differences. For example, there is a Mala Mahanadu, Madhya Dandora, SCs, there are so many, 72 subcastes are there. Even in the BCs, there are so many castes which are still downtrodden. Some few castes have taken all the benefits. If you have such high moral ground, you talk about reservations, no? I ask you, what is the logic of reservations? So you want to take Manudharma Shastra, okay fine. From Manudharma Shastra to 17th century, what was the literacy rate in India? 2%, 3%? What was the syllabus that was taught in India? So it is irrelevant. Only after the British came, 19th, 20th centuries only, there is a modern education. So you have to, if you talk about education, you should take only modern education into consideration. What education is relevant in the 21st century? So you want to say that no, just because there was 3% literary people in the ancient India, medieval India, they were reading some syllabus which was foolish in the present day standards, you want to punish all the present generation. It is as though I should be jailed for the crime my grandfather committed. What the logic? So it is no logic for having reservation. Even if you want to have a reservation, what is the logic that no, a Dalit officer, IAS officer becomes an IAS officer, only his son and grandson grab all the benefits. What about the poor Dalits? Those are suffering at villages, even in your own caste. So tell me, how many of your caste people have become professors just like you? So your family, your own family, it happens to everywhere, all the Bahujans also, this is happening. If you have such a high moral ground, why do you increase it to increase the creamy layer to 8 lakhs? As long as the creamy layer is in 8 lakhs, how can other Dalits, rural Dalits develop? They will be perpetuated because you are making a great sin, you are committing a great sin against your own Dalits and OBCs, and you are criticizing Brahmins and Vaishyas and Shudras of the 16th century CD. So if you have high moral ground, make the creamy layer into 1 lakh, 3 lakh, 5 lakh, take all the poor Dalits and OBCs into first fold, then if there are remaining seats are there, then you have Otherwise, you resign your job, you distribute all your income to the poor fellow caste people. You do not do that. You only make as though you are a victim. You are not a victim. You are a perpetrator of crime against your own caste people, also on Dalits. All the OBCs are perpetrators of crime, that is untouchability against Dalits in the villages. Don't bring in Hinduism, Brahmins, Vaishyas and Sudras. And as far as Buddhism, you just make Buddhism sit on high pedestal. I already told you, if Buddha has preached about untouchability in the 8th century, why untouchability was still continuing. So Buddha did not start his religion to reform caste system, nor to uplift untouchables. So you go and study Buddhism, this is evident. Don't glorify Buddhism. Okay. So you always glorify Buddhism, but you never talk about decline of Buddhism. So if you go through the chapters of decline of Buddhism, Buddhism became, because of the tantric practices, it became virtually Buddhist sanghas became virtually a meeting place of wine and women. In Andhra Pradesh, they started to be called as Lanja Dibbal, prostitute mounts. So you just go through the decline of Buddhism and you will realize what fate Buddhism met after the 10th, 11th, 12th centuries AD. You never raise the decline of Buddhism. You always glorify only the starting of Buddhism. You cherry pick. You never raise about the reform that has taken place in Buddhism. Even today, if Hinduism is not large-hearted, why would it give reservations to Dalits? Why would it appoint Dalits as preachers in temples? If Hinduism is not a noble religion, why would it undertake? Who is objecting to Dalits? No, nobody is objecting to the upliftment of Dalits in Hinduism. Okay. And finally, if somebody does not like Hinduism, he is free to go to any religion. Okay. If Dalits do not like Hinduism, they can convert to any religion. In fact, Ambedkar converted to Buddhism. Let Dalits and Neo-Dalits and you, persons like you, go to Buddhism. Who is preventing you? But you want reservations. You want to eradicate caste system, but you want reservations. How is it possible? Now you want to extend it to private sector also. So the ethic, moral grounds of reservation itself is on shaky grounds. So if you are sincere, if you are honest, first you resign your job, you distribute all your wealth, because in your caste also 1% of the employees of your caste people having all the wealth, you first start distributing your wealth to the poor among your caste. First you distribute all the OBCs, the wealth among the poorer, then only you can preach morals to others. And I am soon going to write a book, Past as Poison, and in the book I will discuss in detail. This I have just given this speech so that people by and large know the truth about Buddhism and Hinduism and the reform that is taken in Hinduism and the poison that is being spread by the agents like Professor Kancha Ilaiah. Thank you.